Hi guys, Mrs. Schurtz here. I just wanted to go over some stuff that we were covering in class to make sure that you have a really firm grasp on it so you can do well. In class, for the last couple days, we've been talking about asexual reproduction versus sexual reproduction, and we made this web of knowledge to keep your notes. So first of all, let's start with asexual reproduction, and it's right here. It's the process in which one organism can create one or more organisms that are identical to the parent. And an example of that would be binary fission, which the definition is right here. It's when it's when an organism splits into two new identical cells. And even though here's an example, would be binary fission, and this is showing two bacterial cells that have copied the DNA and split. So even though we are sexual beings as mammals and as humans, our cells still go through this with binary fission because through the cell cycle, our cells copy and split. So Alex Ritchie asked a really good question. He said, why wouldn't we just say here that it creates two new identical organisms? And I just didn't want to confuse you to make you think that people do this or things other than single-celled organisms do this, because that's not true. Only single-celled organisms can use binary fission. The second one that we talked about, and I'm not sure if I'm going in order, but we'll go through this. The second one is budding, and it's right here, it's in your notes. And budding is another really weird form of reproduction. It's asexual. It's when an organism develops these tiny buds on their body that forms an entirely new identical organism. And an example of budding would be hydras. So this is the original hydra, and this would have been microscopic when it first began, and then over time it goes through the cell cycle. All of the cells continue to reproduce and grow and develop, and then when this is ready to live on its own, it will simply pop off of the original organism and continue living like nothing had ever happened. And then each of those will continue to go through that until the whole organism itself dies. The next one we talked about was something on here. Vegetative reproduction was one that we talked about also in class right here. And this is strictly with plants. It's not how all plants reproduce, but it is somehow how some plants reproduce, like dandelions, the weeds in your yard, the yellow flowers. They do vegetative reproduction. Lots of other things you can use vegetative reproduction to create new plants. So basically it is when a plant grows from already existing stems, roots, or leaves. And an example of that would be right here. And this is just showing a potato. And you guys have probably seen this before where you leave plants or you leave potatoes sitting too long and they develop those things called eyes. And if they are left long enough, they will literally develop plants, and you can plant them and get more potatoes. Let's see, we've done binary fission, we've done vegetative reproduction, we've done budding. Oh, spores, that's the other one. So spores is when a specialized cell, like a fungus cell, and these float all through the air, what will happen is these are all blown up because they're microscopic. They're super, super, super tiny. You can't see them. They float through the air, and then they'll land on something that can be its host, and it will start feeding off of that, getting its energy, and grow and develop into like a fungus, for example. And then sexual reproduction, we just really kind of hit on because we've already talked about it before, but just as a review, it's when two parent sex cells, an egg and a sperm, combine to form an offspring that share traits from both parents. So this is what humans and most all other animals do. What happens is, as you already know because we've done this, the female will donate an egg, the male will donate a sperm. It will fertilize it. Remember, fertilization is the joining of an egg and sperm. And then over time, however long the gestation period is, the cell will go through mitosis, and the organism will grow and develop inside the mother. And then eventually the baby will be born, and it will have traits from both the mom and the dad. The next thing we talked about was those weird kinds of reproduction that are atypical. That means that they don't happen usually. And one of them was fragmentation. And this is when a piece of an organism breaks off and becomes a new organism. The example they gave us in the book were tapeworms. So we know that worms are segmented. So if one of these basically breaks off, if it's cut in half, if it breaks off, sort of like if we were looking at this and then from here on down just broke off. Basically what would happen is that broken off part could become a new organism, a whole new tapeworm in this example. Many worms do that type of reproduction because they're segmented. The other one we talked about in class was parthenogenesis, and that is when an organism reproduces without fertilization. I forgot the reproduces up there. The example that they gave us in the book were aphids. So it's showing you this aphid and the babies around it, but the odd thing about this is that there is no fertilization that happens. There's no sperm involved. And then lastly, we talked about regeneration. And that is when a new organism grows from a piece of the original organism. The example that we gave in the book and the video I showed you in class was all about how starfish regenerate. Chameleons also can regenerate their tail, things like that. So I hope this is helpful to you. If you have any questions, because we are starting our project, we started our research today, we'll continue in class. Watch this as many times as you need to. Look up some YouTube videos. I'll try to find some and post them to My Big Campus. And then if you have any